Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandamadvaitapurnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahmarupam ganesham bhajema parabrahmarupam ganesham bhajema. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste friends. Welcome to session 126 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. We have completed study of Daivasara Sampad Vibhaga Yoga, the 16th chapter. After studying a few mantras from Mundakopanishad last week, today we are going to begin study of Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, the 17th chapter. At the end of this class, Kumari Veda is going to chant the 9 verses of today's study. It's now recap time, and Srimati Chaitanya is here to revisit the Mundakopanishad mantras we studied last week. After her recap, Dr. Hegde sir will give us the introduction of today's class. Over to you, Chaitanya ma'am.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Last week, the topics covered were the disciplines required for spiritual knowledge, the importance of Satyam, and the type of mind one requires to see or discover the Atma. So the 5th mantra mentions the disciplines to be followed to pursue spiritual knowledge, and they are Satyam, Tapas, Samyak Jnanam, and Brahmacharyam. According to Adi Shankaracharya, Satyam is avoidance of untruth. If speaking the truth harms others, then avoid speaking, but never speak the untruth. The next discipline, Tapaha, has 2 meanings. According to the Karma Kanda, Tapaha is self-imposed deprivation like fasting. And according to Jnana Kanda, Tapaha means concentration of the mind and sense organs. Brahmacharya is an important discipline for a Vedic student. Chastity should be in body, mind, and thought. And finally, Samyak Jnana means proper inquiry into the nature of self or Vedanta Vichara. When self-inquiry is made with the help of Guru and Shastra, it is called Samyak Jnana. So one who has always practiced these disciplines and has moksha as his goal is called a yati, according to Mundaka. And such a person discovers pure consciousness within his own self. They see Atma not as an object, but as I, myself, Aham Brahmasmi. The next verse highlights the importance of one of the disciplines, and that is Satyam. You will find that the value of telling the truth is repeated again and again in the scriptures, driving home the fact that speaking untruth brings one down spiritually. That is why in Mahabharata also, they say Dharmaputra's chariot was not touching the ground, but when he uttered the untruth with regard to Ashwatthama, it touched the ground, symbolic of one's spiritual fall. That means at whatever stage of spiritual journey you are, be it Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, or Jnana Yoga, Satyam is very important. The idea is without Satyam, one can never attain the absolute truth of Moksha. So the essence of these 2 mantras is whether you want Mukti here, Sadhyo Mukti, or Krama Mukti, truthfulness is important. Besides practicing these disciplines, we also need a subtle intellect to know or understand Atma. The next mantra explains the necessity for a subtle intellect. Here the Upanishad says, Atma is extremely fine and subtle. So the instrument with which I want to know it, that instrument of knowledge, the mind, also must be well sharpened. And how do we sharpen the intellect? Through Upasana Yoga. So what is the nature of this subtle intellect? Subtle Atma. The mantra says Atma is limitless and infinite. Tat Bruhat. It is beyond even time and space. Then it is self-effulgent and self-evident. It is Sukshmam, subtle. It is inconceivable. Therefore, Atma is inconceivable, incomprehensible, and unobjectifiable. It is subtler than the subtlest object. And where is that Atma? The Upanishad says it is farther than the farthest, and it is nearer than the nearest. So how do we understand the seeming contradiction? According to Shankaracharya, for the ignorant, it is far, and for the wise, it is near and present in one's own mind. And it's just like the distance between a dreamer and the waker. In the next mantra, the importance of the sharp intellect is emphasized once again. It says, the eyes cannot grasp Brahman and words cannot reveal Brahman. However, words are needed to reveal Brahman. It is the consciousness because of which you are hearing these words. So words reveal the ever-present Brahman by pointing out this fact. It cannot be grasped by sense organs, it says. Also, no tapas or rituals can also reveal Brahman. That does not mean tapas or rituals are useless, as it brings in self-control, self-mastery, and chitta shuddhi. Then what is required to reveal Brahman? Two things are required. One is Shastram and the other is Sukshma Buddhi or subtle intellect. Without the support of scriptures, one can never know the Atma. So scriptures plus subtle intellect are required. Both are important, but here in this, the importance of mind is emphasized. Just like to look at my face, I need a mirror and eyes. In the same way, to see the real I require a special mirror, the Shastras, and a special eye called Jnana Chakshu or the subtle intellect. This mind should be pure and tranquil. And how will I get that? By Karma Yoga, you get Vishuddha Sattva, which brings in Vairagyam, and by Upasana, which brings Jnana Prasadam, a tranquil mind by which we acquire Samadhi, Shatka, Sampatti. Such a person with a tranquil and pure mind will recognize this indivisible Brahman through Jnana Yoga. The next mantra also emphasizes that without subtle intellect, it is impossible to recognize Atma. It says this Atma is known through the subtle intellect alone. Eshaha Atma Chetasa Vedit Vyahaha. Why? Because Atma is Anuhu, very subtle. Those with unrefined mind cannot know the Atma. That is why so many refinements or disciplines of the mind are prescribed. And where should that Atma be recognized? One has to know the Atma in one's own body, mind itself, where prana is available in the fivefold manner. The entire body is pervaded by consciousness. Therefore, you can recognize consciousness in your own mind. Since the object of knowledge is very subtle, the instrument of knowledge also must be very subtle. And when is it more evident? It says it is more evident in a quiet mind, but know that consciousness is there in the absence of thoughts and in the presence of thoughts also. So Atma is not affected by the nature of my thoughts. For a person who is aware of this fact, it is always Nitya Siddhaha. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Chaitanya, for giving the essence of all the Upanishadic mantras that we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We begin the study of the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Sarvopanishado Ghavo Dogda Gopala Nandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamratam Mahat. This is the Gita Dhyana Shloka which says the Gita that we are studying is the essence of all the Upanishads. The Upanishads are also called Veda Anta, which means these are the end portion of the Vedas. So the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Vedanta or the end portion of the Vedas. Thanks to our Acharyas, we have had an exposure to the Gita and the Upanishads. Let me repeat, these are all the Veda Anta. What about the Veda Purva? For various reasons, we have not been able to explore, we have not been able to study the Veda Purva. The Veda Purva, if studied, prescribes a very strict lifestyle and a series of sadhanas or spiritual exercises which brings about jnana yogyata or eligibility to study the Vedanta. That means without Vedanta, without Veda Purva, Vedanta is extremely difficult. And without Veda Anta, Veda Purva is incomplete. But what is our problem? We have directly come to Vedanta without seriously working on this eligibility. And if this eligibility or the Veda Purva sadhanas which bring about jnana yogyata, let us look into what is this jnana yogyata that is required. That is why before the Bhagavad Gita is completed, we realize that when Sri Krishna completed the 15th chapter, Sri Krishna uttered to Arjuna as Anaga. "O Anaga, I have given you the greatest of secrets. I have given you all that I could give you." But suddenly he has a doubt whether Arjuna, and through Arjuna all of us, are we eligible for this very refined knowledge? Now, because we have not gone through Veda Purva, let us look at what is this eligibility criteria called sadhana chatustaya. These fourfold qualifications. And if this fourfold qualifications, if we can constantly work on, the first is called Viveka. How is Viveka defined in Tattva Bodha? Viveka is defined as Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. That means all students who have come to the Vedanta, to the Bhagavad Gita and to the Upanishads are clear about what in me is nityaha or permanent and what is impermanent. For example, my body, mind, I know is impermanent. But the drik, the observer, the consciousness in me is nitya. And therefore, from now on, I give a lot of importance, not so much to my body, mind, and the world that comes in relation to my body, mind. Remember the 5 anatmas, in addition to my body and mind, my family, my possessions, my profession, and maybe my friends. So these are the things that we generally tend to value. But now I have shifted from giving importance to any of them, including my body and mind, to the observer, to the drik or the sakshi. Once Viveka is clear, Vairagya comes as a byproduct. How is Vairagya defined? Iha amutra, here and hereafter, artha phala bhoga viragaha. That means for all the sadhanas that I have done, I am no longer interested in gathering punya for this life or my future. Any form of punya, I do not value, because all that is important for the experienced world, and I'm no longer interested in the experienced world. I'm interested only in the experiencer. In order to be able to attain to this, I need Shama Adi Shakta Sampatti. Shama means the mind mastery, Shama Adi. Let us see. And the fourth important requirement is Mumukshutvam or Tivra Mumukshutvam, which means other than moksha, everything else is less important. So what do? Swamiji has given a nice example. For example, if you're traveling on a long distance train that is going to Delhi, we stop at so many intermediate stations where we look around, buy some things. But what is there in the back of my mind? That I am here to travel to Delhi. And if that is my focus, that I am here for Tivra Mumukshutva. As this topic is, this topic of this chapter, the 17th chapter, is Shraddha Traya. Shraddha is among the Shad Sampatti, the 6 wealths that a spiritual seeker should work on. What are the 6 wealths? Shama Adi Shakta Sampatti. Number 1 is Shama or mind control. Number 2 is Dhamma. Dhamma is sense control. Number 3 is uparati. What is uparati? When I know what is important and what is not important. What is not important is my profession, my family, my body, mind, my possessions, and so on. I will give less and less time for all these things. My more and more my time is shifted from the anatma to the atman. If I'm able to be very clear that all these are less important for me, this sadhana is uparati. A student of Vedanta, that means the eligibility required is titiksha. I have got a very toughened mind. Shri Krishna very nicely defines it in the Bhagavad Gita. Matra sparshasu kaunteya sitoshna sukadukha agama pahino anityaha. When you interact in the world, you will have all kinds of experiences, pleasant and unpleasant. But remember, all these experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant, are temporary. And therefore, remember, tam stitikshasva bharata. Let not any of these experiences, both pleasant or unpleasant, affect you mentally. And that is what is called titiksha. I'll come to Shraddha last. And what is samadhana? Samadhana means a single pointed mind. I'm completely focused on what I have to do right now. Am I 100% here? If I am 100% here, I am in the state of samadhana. Then we come to the topic of Shraddha. What is Shraddha? Shraddha means it is almost impossible to define in English what is Shraddha. It is, if there is some definition, it is a combination of devotion plus faith. I will touch on this more in the next class, having a deeper understanding of what is Shraddha. But now let us look at how Tattva Bodha has defined Shraddha. Guru Vedanta Vakya Adishu Vishwasaha Shraddha. What my teacher says, the words of my Acharya, and whatever the words of my scriptures, I take it as gospel truth. This has been spelled out by God. It is not a andha vishwasa. It is not a blind faith. It is something that I have verified and I know that is true. And that is what is called Shraddha. A little quiz for you to find out where do these verses of the Bhagavad Gita come, in which chapter. You will see this is the 40th verse. And if you can think and tell me, where Shri Krishna says Ajnana, Ashraddha and Samshayatma. If a person has Samshaya, does not have Shraddha and Ajnana, all of us have that, then what happens? Such a person is Vinashayati. He is destroyed. Nayam Loko Asti. Neither in this world or in the world beyond, such a person is going to experience Sukham. So again, tell me which chapter, because this verse gives you a hint. Shraddhavan labate jnanam tatpara satendriyaha. So this should be the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So there are 2 verses back to back which talk about Shraddha. Finally, we come to this chapter, Shraddha Traya, where Shraddha is classified under Sathvika, Rajasa and Tamasa. As I said, Shraddha is a combination of faith with devotion. Sathvika is the highest kind of Shraddha where there is no desire. It is the purest form of Shraddha. Whereas Rajasic Shraddha is where it is driven by desire. I want something and therefore there is Shraddha. And Tamasa Shraddha is driven by wrong thinking. So let us see Shraddha in all these 3 categories. To introduce this, the opening verse will be explained to us by Ullas. Ullas, please.
Thank you, sir. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A while ago, I was listening to one of the interviews between our Prime Minister and Virat Kohli, and in which Prime Minister asked Kohli that you have such a grueling schedule, don't you ever get tired? Then he says that if I'm doing anything physical, or for that matter, anybody does that, obviously I do get tired. But what I need to do is I need to eat right, I need to sleep right. Ultimately, if my lifestyle is right, that's the way I can operate at those levels which I'm operating. How much ever cricket practice he can do, but unless he's following those lifestyles, he cannot become King Kohli. So lifestyle, all the things that are surrounding a particular act are very, very important. And we have seen that happen in all the walks of our lives also. We studied earlier in the Karma Yoga also, that Karma Yoga is proper action, but with proper attitude also. That is the part of the lifestyle. Let's take another example. In lifestyle, we see that in next slide, we see that whatever is the seed, however great is that seed, but unless we put it in the right soil, it is not going to fructify. That is the part of the lifestyle, that the soil also has to be very fertile. Now again, lifestyle, what we saw in chapter 2, for example, karmanyevadikaraste, that we do our 100% in every action. We don't look at what is going to be the result of it, and then mauj mein raho. We just enjoy. And how do we enjoy? As sir just mentioned, that be equanimous, whether it is heat or cold, whether we win or lose, so that is the language of the 2nd chapter. But we are again getting into the similar things. We have seen that we have to follow a lifestyle of Devi Sampat and Asuri Sampat. We saw in 16th chapter. So, and also sir also mentioned that there is Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. All these things are trying to tell us that we need to prepare that soil so that when we sow that seed of Jnanam, which was also discussed in the previous chapters of the Charama Shatkam, then only that seed is going to germinate into something which we are really looking for, which is moksha and liberation from this body-mind complex and all. So the importance of the lifestyle, importance of preparing the soil is very, very high. Now coming to the chapter number 17, again, it is a part of, this is because the first verse, so just giving you a brief introduction. We are in the Charama Shatkam. In the first one, we saw about the nature of the individual, then we saw the nature of the Lord. And now in the Charama Shatkam, we are getting into the most juicy part of the knowledge, which is Aikyam. And in that also, in the 13th, 14th, and 15th, we already talked about that seed of Jnanam, all that self-knowledge, whatever that is already been taught to us. Now they are telling us how to prepare that soil, how to make their self-disciplines. In 16th chapter, we looked at all the Devi Sampat and Asuri Sampat. And now in 17th, we are going to say Shraddha, as sir mentioned. Now in the next slide, we see that in the last chapter, it was mentioned that unless you have that Shraddha, unless you are following the scriptural do's and don'ts, you are not going to achieve what you are set out for, at least not in the optimal way. You are not going to get that peace and bliss. It was discussed in 16.23. And here also it says that scriptures define these do's and don'ts. It is already there in the Veda Purva part. So one should not only know, but also implement also. It says, Nyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam Karmam Kartum Yahar Harsi. Kartum also. Just don't know them. You have to do also. There are many fields of studies in which, for example, physics. I can be a great physicist even though my Asuri Sampati is very high. I can be the biggest criminal, but I can also be, traversing the universe. So in those areas, it is allowed. But here in Vedanta, it is very important that our entire lifestyle is also of very high Devi Sampat. Then only that proper attitude is going to come. Then only our karma is going to become karma yoga, and then we'll purify our mind. And ultimately, our soil will be fertile enough for that seed to grow. So in the 17th chapter, in the next slide, we see, now this question arises in Arjuna's mind that ye shastra vidhim utsrajya yajante shraddhayan vitaha. Yajante, ye. These people who are doing worship, shraddhayan vitaha, who have the shraddha, but they are doing it with shastra vidhi utsrajya. But they are not doing it with the scriptural injunctions. They are not following whatever is written in shastras. What happens to those people is what he's asking. And when we say Shraddha, sir also mentioned, and Swamiji says that Shraddha, some people would say that we don't have blind faith or we don't have blind Shraddha. We only believe in things that we can see and, feel and touch. But in Swamiji's words, Shraddha is something which is needed only when we have ignorance about something. That is when Shraddha is that bridge which crosses us from this side to that side. 2 + 2 = 4 does not need Shraddha. But if I'm boarding a plane, then I need that Shraddha in the pilot that yes, he's going to land me on the other side. Otherwise, I cannot be knowing that for sure. So that Shraddha is needed. And Shraddha is generally needed in 4 areas. One is on scriptures, on our gurus who are teaching us those scriptures, in Ishvara, and then most importantly on ourselves also. Here he is talking about what if these people don't have Shraddha in these scriptures, either knowingly or unknowingly. Some people are even scripturally illiterate because they haven't had a chance to look at the Ved Purva part. They don't know how to place the deity, which side they should be sitting. When they say Achman, they have to drink it themselves or they have to offer it to the Lord. All these things, if they are scripturally illiterate because of any reason, but they have the faith in all the puja and worship that they are doing, what happens? Tesham nishtha tu ka Krishna. In which status would you put them, Krishna? Sattvam, Tam, or Rajas? Which of these he would put them into? And this chapter itself is called Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga because we are discussing in the entire chapter this Shraddha only. And Shraddha can be obviously of 3 types as is mentioned here. So he asks that if these people have faith, but they do not follow the scriptural injunctions, where do you classify them? And in the rest of the chapter, we'll see what Krishna would respond to this question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ullas, for giving us a nice introduction to the 17th chapter and also to be able to explain this verse. And this verse essentially is a very sincere question by Arjuna. Now, there are people who may not know the Shastra Vidhi. That is why I said we have not gone into Veda Purva. Veda Purva gives very strict scriptural disciplines of how and when and what it has to be done. When you do not know the Shastra discipline, but you have Shraddha, Shraddha Anvita, even though Utsrija, you have given up Shastra Vidhi, but they yajante, they do worship. Now, what kind of Shraddha is it? Is it Sathvika? Is it Rajasa? Is it Tamasa? Now, this has given Krishna an opportunity to classify all forms of sadhana. You will see Yajna, Dana, Tapaha, Ahara, and it will go on well into the 18th chapter where all forms of sadhanas are classified under these 3 categories. Is it Sattva? Is it Rajas or Tamas? The answer, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the next 2 verses will be explained to us by Sharmila. Sharmila, please.
Gurubhyo Namaha. In verses 17.2 to 17.6, Lord Krishna answers Arjuna's question from the previous verse. What is the status of people who ignore the scriptural rules and worship with faith? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Trivida Bhavati Shraddha Dehinam Sasvabhavaja Sathviki Rajasi Chaiva Tamasi Cheti Tam Shruno. Lord Krishna said, for all human beings, faith is threefold, as Sathvik, Rajasic, and Tamasic. It is born of one's nature. So listen to me. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Lord Krishna said, Dehinam, for all human beings, Shraddha Bhavati. Faith is Trivida, threefold. Iti, as Sathviki, Sathvik, Rajasi Chaiva, Rajasic, Cha Tamasi, and Tamasic, Sa Swabhavaja. It is born out of one's nature. Shrunutam, listen to me. So Lord Krishna answers that the character of a person is threefold. Hence, the faith is also threefold. That is Sathvik Shraddha or Rajasic Shraddha or Tamasic Shraddha. Swami Paramatmananda Ji says that there can be only 2 possibilities. Scripture governed faith, which results in Sathvik Shraddha, and character governed faith, which is based on character. In this case, it cannot be scripture governed as these devotees are scripturally illiterate. So it is character governed. Lord Krishna says that for this type of devotee, his faith will be governed by his personality, his mindset, his inclinations, and vasanas. Shri Krishna wants Arjuna to listen carefully as he continues his answer in verse 17.3. Sattvanurupa sarvasya Shraddha bhavati bharata Shraddha mayoyam purusho yo yachadrahase evisaha. O Arjuna, for everyone, faith is according to his temperament. A person consists of his faith. He is truly what his faith is. The word meanings are Bharata, O Arjuna, Sarvasya, for everyone. Shraddha, faith is Bhavati Sattvanu Rupa, according to his temperament or mind. I am Purusha, a person. Shraddhamaya consists of his faith. Sa ivasaha, he is truly ya yachadraha, what his faith is. So if a person's faith is born out of his mind or temperament, then what is the mind controlled by? Swami Paramatmananda ji asks if it is controlled by the lifestyle of the parents or the genes of the parents. He says these factors contribute to the mind or character of the child, but do not determine the character of the child. If parents determine the character of their children, then all children of the same parents should have the same character. But this is not true, as each sibling is different from the other. This is because each sibling comes with a purva janma and hence with different vasanas or tendencies. Prahalada can be born to Hiranyakashipu and Ravana can be born to Rishi Vishravasa, because the Purva Janma contributes to this. Bharata is the land of spirituality. We should value this spirituality. Sri Krishna warns us not to take this precious gift for granted. He advises parents to teach good values to their children so they will develop a good character. So as a person thinks, so he becomes. The well-known saying goes, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habit. Watch your habit, it becomes your character. And watch your character, it becomes your future personality. Thank you. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you very much, Sharmila. That was another very clear and a nice explanation of these two verses. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha. Shri Krishna is replying to Arjuna's question. Now, here is a person who does not know the Shastra Vidhi, the rules of the Shastras, but there is a lot of Shraddha in him. Now, how would you classify his form of devotion? Can we go back to the 9th chapter where Shri Krishna has said, Patram, Pushpam, Palam, Toyam. It does not matter what you give me, but what matters is how you give me. Is there Shraddha? So that Shraddha can be classified, he says, Trivida. It can be Sathvik, Rajasic, or Tamasic. As we already discussed in the introduction, a Sathvik Shraddha is one of pure love for God. I'm not asking for anything. There is no desire in my heart. There is a Rajasic Shraddha is driven by desire. I want something and therefore I have all the devotion. And Tamasic Shraddha is unfortunately because of ignorance. I do not know what is right, and I have also been misled by my spiritual practices, and that is what is called Tamasic Shraddha. So Shri Krishna replies, the next verse, that is verse 3, begins with Sattvanurupa. Now this is an important word to understand. The Sattvanurupa does not mean sattva at all. It means the nature of one's mind. So he says, your Shraddha depends upon the nature of one's mind. And the nature of one's mind is partially governed by the surroundings, the kind of family that you belong to, but very importantly, the vasanas that you have come to. Now, if your vasanas are very strong or in a positive direction, for example, if you are Shraddha Maya, that means you are full of Shraddha. Or on the other hand, if your vasanas are not so good, sa eva saha, a person becomes accordingly. That means according to what you come with, that is your blueprint of your life and combined with the environment. And that is why your mental outlook is so important. How you see yourself, how you see your world. As Swamiji again and again replies, you are what you think. Watch your thoughts, they become your words, and therefore your thoughts determine your destiny. Two important words or three important verses we have studied. Let us look at two more verses that will be explained by Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra. Dr. Sanjay, please.
Hari Om, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. As we have already discussed this characterization of the three gunas, how individual or attitude of an individual, how he behaves, how he does his sadhana. So here Krishna is describing the various sadhanas and attitude of people according to their gunas, and how a sattva pradhan or a rajas pradhan or a tamas pradhan person or a people do sadhanas of worship, and what is their intention accordingly. So here the intent becomes very important. Also, how their shraddha and mistaken understanding about the mode of puja. They may have shraddha, they may have lot of shraddha as a tamasic shraddha, but where the intent is wrong. So it is important to understand how these gunas affect your shraddha and your upasana or puja. This is the description in the verse 4, 5, and 6 as well. Now, next slide, sir. So the verse goes like this: Yajante Sathvika Devan Yaksha Rakshansi Rajasaha Pretan Bhutganan Cha Anye Yajante Tamsaha Jana. Next slide, please. Sathvik people, Yajante, worship Devan, the gods. Rajasic people worship Yaksha and Rakshasas, the Yakshas and Rakshasas. Anye Tamasa Jana. Tamasic people worship Pretanacha and Bhutaganan also. So what it means is that Sathvik worship the gods, Rajasic people worship the Yakshas and Rakshasa, and Tamasic people worship the ghost and the spirit. Now I have a bit of an understanding which I think I will share with and of course I will like Dr. Khegre to comment on it, is that how your gunas are, which is maybe sattva pradhan, tamas pradhan, and also rajas pradhan. And I think it is possible to move from one layer to second layer or third layer. And everybody has almost all kinds of gunas. It depends upon what is the major contributor to his prakriti, to his nature or behavior. And I think what works is that your jnanendriyas, your perceptions, your ability to acquire information is also subject to what kind of gunas you have. So if you have a lot of sattva in you, you will see only sattva, and that you will perceive better. So then your mind gets conditioned into a situation where it has not acquired a lot of tamasic mentalities. It has not acquired a lot of rajasic mentalities. And as an effect of that, when you respond with those understanding, your nature would be like that. So how these gunas are embedded in you is according to the prakriti. That prakriti is part of this maya, the maya which has come from Brahman. So this is what I understand. Next slide, please. Now, Shraddha, as Dr. Hegde has described, it's equated to faith in English, but it's a very, very poor equal word for Shraddha. It is an invisible thing, and it is a mental state, and is not easy to perceive, but has to be inferred by other methods. And what are those methods? What types of activity a person does, what type of activity a person takes, what type of activity or the puja an individual takes can help in knowing the Shraddha, which is on the object of the worship. So here the object of worship is also important. A Sathvik person worships the Sathvik deities like the Rama and the Krishna. And what is the intent for this individual to worship such deities? He wants his spiritual growth so that it can contribute to the inner growth. And he's seeking the blessing of these avatars like Rama and Krishna to move forward in his life. So his intent is to grow spiritually, and that is important. A Rajasic person worships the Rajasic deities which give materialistic well-being. And these are like the devatas like Yaksha, Kinnara, Gandharva, Siddha, etc. Next slide, please. The tamasic deities are the pretas, the bhutas, the pichachas, dakini, sakini, etc. They may follow black magic, they may follow ghost spirits, which represent the evil forces. So these evil forces do exist in their, what you call is the subtle bodies, but they are not used for material gain also, but they are used to harm others. So these are the tamasic pravritti, where people does where a person does an upasana to these deities, where he want to acquire power or hurt someone. So what Krishna says here is Sathvika Devan Yajante. People with Sathvik sadhana, Shraddha, they worship the Lord and ask for Devi Sampat. Rajasaha Yaksha Rakshasami Jante. Religiously materialistic people, although they are religious, it's not that they don't follow religion, but they are materialistic and they worship for selfish or material gain only. And anye tamasajana, tamasic people they worship other than this. What is that? Bhuta, Pishach, Dakini, Sakini, that kind of an evil worship of the evil spirits, which is to harm others. Next slide, please. Ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante ye tapo janaha damba ahankara sanyuktaha kama raga balanvitaha. Next slide, please. Now, this is the 5th verse. Ye jana, some people, tapyante, practice ghoram tapam. Their austerities are severe, very, very, severe austerities they do. Ashastra vihitam, which is not prescribed by the Shastra. They are ashastric activities. Although they are ghoram, they do extreme tapah. Damba ahankara sanyukta, and they are given to pretension and egoism. There is dambha and ahankar. They are mixed with damba and ahankar. And kam, raga, balanvita, and are possessed by the impulse of desire and attachment. Some people practice severe austerities, which is not prescribed in the scriptures. They are given to pretension and egoism and are possessed by the impulse of desire and attachment. Next slide, please. Ashastra vihitam, the Rajasic and Tamasic people involved in the violations of the Shastric teachings and the scriptural rule. And these people do extreme austerities, ghoram. They do all kinds of terrible things, piercing their bodies, damaging their bodies, and standing and sleeping, standing in cold Ganges water. Swami Paramatma described, if you go to Himalayas, you will see some of these people standing erect for years. They have got, and they're in front of them, there is a small spread of a cloth in which they are seeking money also. This is considered to be tapas, but in fact, it's a ghoram tamas. It is extreme form of tamas. And this is done for what? Damba ahankara samyukta, because of their publicity seeking, for pomp and show. So kama raga balanvita. Their desire is not moksha, but worldly name, fame, or money. Kama means desires for worldly things. Raga means attachment, and balam means power. Examples in scriptures are Ravana and Hiranyakashipu. They all come under the Rajasic or Tamasic variety, and not only they torment their bodies, Krishna says in the next verses, they also torment me who reside in them, in all those individuals. So their inner being is not different from anybody else, but it's their gunas, their prakriti, which make them do all these things, where their leaning or their attitude or this intent is not sattvic in nature. And this is expressed in the next verse. Hari Om Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, for a very clear explanation of these two verses. The fourth verse very nicely classifies the three types of shraddhas, or the types of worship to what type of gods. The question asked by Dr. Sanjay is, what is that which determines our shraddha? When we listen to all these explanations of these verses, there is a tendency to say, see, that person is very Rajasic, the other person is Tamasic, and I am Sathvik invariably. But then we should remember all of us have all the three gunas, and what really matters is what is more predominant. And from this, from the 14th chapter, we realize our whole exercise is, can we move from Tama Pradhana to Rajo Pradhana to Sattva Pradhana, both in the kinds of devas we worship and also into the various tapasya that we do. And we have a description of these Gora tapas, which is Shastra Vihita, which is not prescribed in the scriptures, and which is demonstrates hypocrisy, ego, and it is driven by passion. We have a little shift in the topic. Now we come to the continuation of this tapa, and then we enter into ahara. Dr. Chandrakala, please.
Thank you, sir. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the previous verses, we have learned the mode and motive of worship determines whether our puja is Sathvik, Rajasic, or Tamasic. So why it is important to know what type of Shraddha we practice? Because if we have Sathvik Shraddha, we can nourish it. If Rajasic, we can gradually change it. If it is Tamasic, drop immediately. In the previous verse 17.5, we learned that some people practice severe austerity, which is not prescribed in the scriptures. So coming to, in continuation of the Tamasic and Rajasic form, coming to the verse 17.6, Karshayantaha sharirastam bhutagramam achetasaha mam chaivataham sharirastam tan vitti asura nischayan. Coming to the meaning, Karshayantaha, tormenting their body by starving too much, depriving the organs of the body of the required nutrition, making the body very weak. With this weak body, one cannot do any religious or spiritual sadhana. Both extremes, that is torturing the body or pampering the body, both should be avoided because it is dangerous. Destroying the body is never the aim of any type of puja or tapas. Controlled austerity is what prescribed to gain mastery over a body. Bhutagramam means all the organs of the body, that is heart, lungs, kidney, brain, become weak. Who does this? Achetasaha. Those intelligent people, they neglect their physical health by tormenting. By doing that, they are not only tormenting themselves, me as well, who reside in their body. Aham sharirastam. We all know body is the seat of the Lord, like a temple. When the temple is ill-treated, it is as good as ill-treating the Lord. And ill-treating the body is a violation of the duty which is given by the Lord. Body is the first instrument of dharma, Viddhitan. So know that all such devotees are asura nischayan. They are devotees of asuric nature, violent resolve. It comes under Rajasic and Tamasic type. Now, in the next verses, Lord voluntarily discusses additional topics. They are relevant to a spiritual seeker, for which he gives the introduction in this verse itself. That is, aharaha, yajnaha, austerity, tapaha, and dhana. Coming to the verse 17.7, aharastvapi sarvasya trivido bhavati priyaha yajnas tapastatha dhanam tesham bedamimam shruno. Ahara sarvasya priyaha. The food that everyone likes to consume is Trivita Bhavati. It is of three types: Sathvik, Rajasic, Tamasic categories. Yagnaha, the type of puja a person performs, is also Trividaha, three types. Tapaha means austerity, penance, is also of three types. Then finally, Dhanam, charity. It is also of three types. Tesham Vedam, about their divisions, Shruno, may you carefully listen to them. All these are important for the spiritual seeker. As a general rule, Sathvik people get attached to Sathvik food, Sathvik yajna, Sathvik tapas, and Sathvik dhanam. A person gets attachment depending upon their temperament. By this description, one will be able to know where do they stand and can regulate their life. Each of these will be described in detail in the following verses. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandrakala, for a very nice explanation of these two verses. The first verse spoke about that it is not okay to be extremely harmful on the body. Such people are achetasaha. They are not using their intellect properly and they are damaging this body. There I am also an indweller. That is what Sri Krishna says. Take care of your body, do your sadhanas, but don't damage your body. Then comes the introduction to, from now on, the rest of the chapter. That means ahara, yajna, dana, tapaha will be classified into all the three categories, which we'll see in the last speaker will explain the next two verses. Diksha, please.
Hari Om. Ayusattva balarogya sukha priti vivartanaha rasya snigdha sthira hritya ahara satvika priyaha. In the 8th and the 9th verses, Lord Krishna deals with Sathvik and Rajasic food respectively. Our Vedic tradition is a very sacred tradition where every mundane, natural and instinctive activities are elevated to the level of spiritual sadhana. Simple regulated breathing is converted into a yagna called pranayama yagna. Eating is the next most natural and universal activity, and it is an offering to the Lord within me as Vaishvanara, and whatever I am eating is an offering called pranagni-hotram. Next, even bathing is a sacred ritual. In Ahara Yagna, 4 factors are considered. Firstly, the source of the food. Tradition has given a lot of importance to the source from where it comes, who cooks the food, and the attitude with which it is cooked. Is it out of love and compassion? According to Shastra, we are receiving the invisible vibrations or the punyam or papam, also depending upon the source. If the source is negative, it will add papam, which is called asat parigraha papaha. Asat is impure. Parigraha is receiving food from an impure source. Second is the quality of the food. Here we have the classification as Sathvik, Rajasic and Tamasic. Third one is the quantity of the intake. So thumb rule of our tradition is that we have to eat only when we are hungry and not full stomach, only half, rest 1/4 for water and 1/4 for air. Last one is the mode of eating, which is also a form of yagna. Beginning of eating is prayerful, in between is prayerful, which ends is also prayerfully. In this 8th verse, Sathvik diet is elaborated. Here, we have to remember that our vegetarianism is considered as Sathvik in our tradition. Ayuhu means longevity. Sathvik diet increases the longevity. Sattvam, manobalam, the strength of the mind, mental immunity to violent emotions. Then balam, the physical strength. Next is arogyam, that is health. It is scientifically and statistically proved that all the organs are generally healthy in vegetarianism. Then sukham means internal relaxation, free from physical and mental stress and strain after the food intake. Preeti, comfort and happiness at the time of eating. Thus, with a sattvic diet, there is lightness in the body and lightness in the mind, leading to sukhapriti vivardhanam. Rasahya, that is sweet and delicious. We have to develop a taste for vegetarian food. So sweet in a limited quantity is considered sattvic. Snigdha, food that is not very dry. So ghee and oil in moderation is sattvic again. Sthiraha, physically nourishing. Hridya, that is visually pleasing, pleasing to the sight. Lord Krishna says all sattvic people naturally like this sattvic food. Now, in the next verse, let us discuss about the Rajasic diet. Katvam lalavanatyushna tikshna ruksha vidahinaha ahara rajasasyeshta dukkha shokhamaya pradaha. The word meaning goes like this. Those food items which are spicy, sour, saltish, hot, pungent, dry and burning, which causes pain, sorrow and diseases and those foods which are liked by the Rajasic people. Here Lord Krishna says that other than sweet, all the other tastes of Shad Rasam, the 5 rasas in excess, is considered as Rajasic. They are Katu, Amla, Lavana, Ushna, Tikshna, Ruksha, Vidahinaha. Ati should be added to every one. Ati Katu means extremely spicy. Ati Amla means extremely sour. Ati Lavana is too salty. Ati Ushna is very hot. Ati Tikshna is very spicy. Ati Ruksha is very dry. And Ati Vidahinaha, any types of food that burns the internal organs. Swamiji gives the example of mustard, which is not good for the stomach. Rajasya ishtaha, such foods which are liked by the Rajasic people. Such food will have adverse effect, that is dukkham, which stands for the short term, as well as shokam, is a long term unhappiness. Amaya pradam causes variety of diseases like ulcer, etc. Thus, all such food leads to dukkha shokhamaya pradaha. These Rajasic people are highly active but spiritually non-conducive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Diksha, for a very nice explanation of these 2 verses about Ahara, both Sathvik and Rajasic, and it is very appropriate that these verses came to you. We'll conclude today's class by the chanting of these verses by this little Veda. Veda, please.
Om Shri Krishna Parabrahmane Namaha Atha Srimad Bhagavad Gita Shaddatraya Vibhaga Yogo Nama Saptadashodhyaya Arjuna Vacha Shastra Vidimuchudya Yajante Shraddhayanvitaha Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna Satvamaho Rajastamaha Shri Bhagavan Vacha Trividha Bhavati Shraddha Dehinam Sasvabhavaja Satviki Rajasi Chaiva Tamasi Cheti Tamshinu Sattvanurupa Sarvasya Shraddha Bhavati Bharata Shraddha Mayoyam Purushaha Yo yachraddhasya eva saha yajante satvika devan yaksharakshansi rajataha pretan bhutaganaschane yajante tamasa janaha asastra goram tapyante yetapojana Ambahangara samyukta kamaraga balanvita karshayantas sharirastam bhutagramamachetasah mam chevanta sharirastam tan vidyasura nishchaya aharastvapi sarvasya trivido bhavati priyaha yagnastapastata danam tesham vedamimam shunu ayusattva balarogya sukhapriti vivardhana rasya snigdha stira hridyaha ahara satvika priyaha katvam lalavana tishna tikshna ruksha vidayena ahara Rajasa Shreshtaha Dukkashoka Maya Pradaha. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, little angel Veda, for your magnificent chanting. Friends, Veda is just 6 years old and is in her first standard. She is the granddaughter of our teachers Srimati Vani and Sri Bhaskar. Thank you, teachers of the day, for an engrossing session. Thank you, seekers, for your active participation. On Monday, 19 December 2022, let us log in for a new session 40 of Disha for the discovery of inner strength and happiness at 6:45 p.m. In this episode of Disha, we are going to study 9th chapter along with Tattva Bodha topic on Atma. On that note, let us conclude today's session with our usual Shanti mantra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.